In this video, we are going to do the walkthrough and demos of the private link DNS zones and link them to the virtual networks. I am on the learn page again. Don't worry, I linked this learn page with the demo video, so you can refer from there. The thing that we need to understand, see, Microsoft Azure has many services and many of them supports private endpoint. And when we create a private endpoint for those services, what is essential is basically to ensure that name resolution for those private endpoint works rightly. So there is a specific mechanism that Azure provide to us, and that is called private DNS zones for private link. So what are those services that basically we can create private endpoints for? These are the services. So in the AI and machine learning, you can see analytics, you can see compute, containers, databases, hybrid, multi-cloud, integration, right? Whatever the services are there, you can see that actually provides a private endpoint capability, so that the communication is on the Azure backbone itself. It's not traversing through the open internet, which provides a lot more security to the workload, right? Now, what is that we're gonna do? We are going to create a couple of private link DNS zones. Okay. Now, the popular one is basically, let's say one of them is Key Vault. Key Vault, if you look at it, a public DNS zone for the Key Vault is this. That means if you create a Key Vault will get this particular public DNS suffix if you're not adding private endpoint. But if you add a private endpoint, this is what going to be their DNS suffix. But what we need to do, you can basically create with the resource itself, or usually what happens, you host all these private DNS zones centrally in the hub network, and that is what we're going to do and experience here. So let me go back to the portal, and here do we have the resource group? Let's make sure that we got a resource group. We got a resource group for private zone. How many zones are there? Let's make sure that there is only one, which we created in the earlier demo. So let's keep that as it is. Okay. Now, what is that we're gonna do? We are going to say private DNS zones. That is what we need. All right. And we go ahead and create the DNS zone exactly suggested by Microsoft. So the first one that we're going to create is basically for the Key Vault. So we need to ensure that this private DNS zone name is created here. All right, so we select this, we just give the name as it is, and we just say review and create. We don't need to do anything else more than this. All right, is deploying, is creating. In meanwhile, what I'm gonna do, I will go ahead and pull up this guy as well. We just want to experience with a couple of them so that we know exactly how that works. Okay, this particular private zone is created. All right, so you can see that private link Vault Core Azure.net. Nothing is there in the record set. Let's quickly scan through what we get. Only the SOA record. That's what we see there. Now let's go back to the private zone once again. Private DNS zones. And here, what is that we're gonna do? We are going to create one more there, which is called this private link.blab.store.windows.net. Validation pass. Let's go ahead and create this one as well. All right, this one is also created. Let's make sure that what we get in the record set here, SOA record, nothing more than that, right? So we go back again to the private DNS. Let's make sure that we see both of them created. Correct. Now, once we create this one, what is essential? to make sure that it is used by the networks. It's to link the network. This is the first thing that you should do. So we go ahead and link this one to the spoke one network. All right, so we select the spoke one network. That is what we got, and we can say enable auto registration, but we don't need to say in this particular case because it's not VM. Sometimes you delete, you recreate, so many things that you keep doing, right? So let's make sure that we just got this one like that. All right, so that's the first thing. Second thing, again, we add a link to the hub as well. We haven't done that. We link for the hub one. We select the network hub one, and in this case as well, we'll go ahead and create the link. We also do the similar thing for the vault core. We just go and select those two networks in this case. Okay, let's go ahead and add on the vault core as well. We can call it as the same name, spoke one, because spoke one, and we go ahead and select the spoke one. No auto registration, we just add the link, and we also go ahead and here add the link hub one. Select the hub one network, and no need to say enable auto registration, and we just need to make sure that the links are added here. All right, we again go back to the private DNS zone, make sure that we have those virtual network links enabled and completed. You can see that it's completed, both of them is seen. In this case as well, let's make sure that it is completed, right? So now both the virtual network hub and spoke one is basically linked to this particular private DNS zone. Now let's go to the resource called Key Vault, and let's see what are the challenge here. We see now when you deploy Key Vault, let's say we're deploying this Key Vault in the workload. Okay, and let's give a name, something like my secret, something unique, just to make it unique. And we select the Australia East so that we get a network. Sub delete enable, purge protection disable, retain today's deleted vault. I would say only 7 days because that's the demo. Otherwise it just keep the things there. Here role-based access control is fine. You might need to enable this one based on your requirement. I think I'll just go ahead and check that one, nothing more than that. Let's select the network. Now by default it create a public endpoint, right? Enable public access, we would like to say no, and this is where we can add a private endpoint. Now here we select the similar resource group, we select Australia East, that's where our network is. You can name something like that, and that's basically the target sub resource. You have to select that from the list. That's one there only. Virtual network, this is going to be the spoke in this particular case, and we're going to select the private endpoint network that we created. Now here is the deal. Private DNS integration. Here it is prompting you to basically create the one, and this one will be created within the subscription and within the resource group, where you creating this particular resource. Okay, in this case we are going to say no, because we don't want that record to be created within the resource group where this Key Vault is basically being deployed. Okay, so let's go ahead and say something like that and say review and create. Okay, so let's wait for the validation to finish. Let's go ahead and say create now, and you can see that the Key Vault is deployed now. Let's go to the resource and networking, and we got the private endpoint here, and let's click on the private endpoint, and this is where you can perform the DNS configuration. Because we did not do the DNS configuration, Now it's the time to do the DNS configuration for a specific zone. Now let's see whether we can get a private DNS zone. If you look at, this is the one that we recommended for this resource, right? This is the one that we created. Now it can see that, right? And you can leave that name as it is, and then you say something like this. All right. And once you add that, now there is a record, right? That would be added. You can see that privatelink.worldcore.azure.net. This is the record now added within this particular private DNS zone. And if we go here and take a look into the record set, we should see that key vault record added. These things are very essential to make sure that your name resolution works properly. All right. And this is where I find a lot of miss, when people do hub and spoke kind of things for the private DNS zones, and they don't basically do something like this. So this is one thing. Let's take a look for the storage account. Let's go ahead and try to add a storage account, and let's see the experience. In this case, we go ahead and select the resource group. We say storage account, something like that. We don't need to bother about the name there. We select the blob service. Let's stick to that. Standard, we don't want that one. We can go with the LRS only for the test. All these things are nice to have. We not worried about, because this is a networking course and we'll put a focus on networking only. Network access by default is a public access. Public in the sense that not anybody can come and do unless they got a secret. But the endpoint is accessible for the public, right? That's what the thing is. Now disable the public access, add a private endpoint, and let's see what we get here. Similar thing, we name this one as something like this. That's the blob one we created as a private zone. So we just going to choose this one. Otherwise, you have to create the private zone for each type of storage service that you see here, right? So we created for blob, and we going to select the hub network. No, not hub. We're going to select the spoke network, and there is a private endpoint, right? And here, let's go integrate with the existing DNS. Okay, so we say the DNS zone that is there. You can see that there is a DNS zone that we created in advance. We select that, we say okay. That means the endpoint record for that private link will be added into that particular DNS zone. So that is how you can do for the storage account. All right, it is deployed. Go to the resource, and let's make sure that we go to the networking again. Click on the private endpoint, and let's make sure that we see the record for the private endpoint. That's the private endpoint, and that's the record. All right, so what we can do, we can basically go to the private DNS zone, because here I don't see the link directly to go there. Private DNS zones. All right, so let's go to the blob. We just want to see there is a record added. When we created that endpoint, and you can see that the record is added, right? So that is how it works. Now hope you got an idea, understanding like a key vault as well as like a storage account. Now, when we did for the storage account, we were in a position to get the private zone from the drop-down list. It's just because of those zones are created in the same subscription. But when you have those zones are created in a different subscription, then you don't have that particular choice. And that is what we try to demonstrate with Key Vault. Okay. In Key Vault case as well, if you do the drop down, you might see those zones created, right? But I just simulated the case there where, those particular private DNS zones are created in a different subscription. That visibility is not there. with the resources in a subscription actually when you have that hub and spoke model, right? So I hope you got that understanding when we did with the key vault, thinking that the private DNS zones are created in the different subscription and how to add a DNS record afterwards. And when it is in the same subscription and you got a private DNS zone in that subscription, how you can choose through the portal itself, right? So those are the two things to understand. Don't get confused in this particular demonstration. It's just because I try to demonstrate two different scenarios for the private DNS zone when it is in the same subscription and when it is not in the same subscription. That's all pretty much in this video.